Hi there, how are you doing? My name is Mutiaba Conrad. I'm a lawyer and a private law tutor. And basically, today we are going to be looking at a very interesting offense, which is the offense of aggravated defilement. But before we start on our class, I encourage you to like, subscribe, and share my channel, and also ensure that you turn on the notification so that you're always able to get an up-to-date whenever we release these videos. It's also very important for students who need private tutorial sessions to contact us. Our contact is down in the description box. You can find us. These private sessions really help, and they can really cause a fundamental change towards improving your academic grades. That mentoring, that expert touch is extremely very important for you to really increase on your grades, and these grades really matter. They really play a very big role in your legal practice. So let's start right away with our topic of aggravated defilement. And in this class, we are basically going to be looking at the definition, the law that provides for this offense. Then we'll also look at the ingredients of the offense. Then in between there, we'll really make an analysis of the various laws and what courts have held on this offense. And also, very interestingly, this offense really confuses students so much. So we are going to also make an analysis of the aggravating factors, or what are those aspects that actually make this type of defilement aggravating in nature. So we are going to unpack this complex offense of aggravated defilement, and by the end of this video, you'd really be in a better position than you were. So let's start right away with the law that provides for this offense. I encourage you to look at the Penal Code Act, section 129, subsection 3(4) of the Penal Code Act is authoritative on the offense of aggravated defilement. The punishment of this offense is death, and the punishment is under section 129, subsection 3 of the same Penal Code Act. Let's now proceed to look at the ingredients of this offense, which are also under the law. I encourage you to look at section 129, subsection 4A of the Penal Code Act. It clearly lays down the ingredients of this offense. And the first ingredient is that the victim must have been below 14 years of age. The second ingredient is that a sexual act was performed on the victim, and then lastly, that the accused performed the sexual act on the victim. Of course, this last element is always intended to put the accused person on the scene of crime. So those are the three ingredients of aggravated defilement. And of course, depending on the facts of the case, we'll also look at the aggravating ingredients, which we'll later on look at in material detail, which actually make it aggravating or aggravated defilement. Which ones are those? One of them is that the accused was infected with HIV. The other aggravating ingredient is that where the accused person was actually a parent or guardian, and then the other one is where the accused person is a serial offender, and then also where the victim is a person with disability. So these four ingredients, each is independent, and it is one of those added on the other three that actually make it aggravated defilement. Very important to note there. So depending on the facts of the case, if you see any of those four coming up, then of course you add it also as a fourth ingredient, and that is what actually makes this offense aggravated defilement under the Ugandan law. So let's proceed to look at the first ingredient, which is that the victim is below 14 years. This is quite straightforward. I'll just proceed to give you an authority for the same. I encourage you to look at the case of Uganda versus Kagoro Godfrey. It's HC Criminal Session case number 141 of 2002. And in this case, basically, court held that proof of age, if you're attempting as prosecution to prove age, you prove it by one, production of a birth certificate, or if that is not there, you can then also go on to rely on the testimony of parents of the child. And then number three, the court's own observation. Do not forget the principle and rule that the court is the master and expert of all experts. And then lastly, common sense assessment of the age of the child by court can also suffice as proof of the victim's age. Then the second ingredient is performance of a sexual act. So for this ingredient, I encourage you to look at section 129, subsection 7 of the Penal Code Act, which defines a sexual act as penetration of the vagina, anus or mouth, however slight the penetration. As we have always looked at in these sexual offenses, the degree of penetration really does not matter. Any slight penetration, even if it's quarter an inch or however small it is penetration sufficient enough to fall within the legal walls. Let's proceed on that same ingredient. I'm going to share with you an interesting case of Remigius Chiwanuka versus Uganda. It's a Supreme Court Criminal Appeal number 41 of 1995. This case is unreported, and court held basically that one, the slightest penetration is enough. This is what I've been emphasizing. And then number two, court also held that proof of penetration is established by the victim's personal evidence and also maybe medical evidence and any other cogent evidence. So medical evidence, cogent evidence, and also the evidence of the victim is sufficient to prove penetration. Let's now proceed right away to look at the third ingredient, which is that the accused performed the sexual act on the victim. Yes, it is true. There must be the performance of the sexual act. If there is no the performance of the sexual act, then there cannot be aggravated defilement. Under this ingredient, I encourage you to look at the case of Uganda versus Amweko Nimungu Patrick. This is criminal session case number 0154, a case of 2016. Very interesting judgment of Justice Stephen Mubiru, who I find to be the best judge in this country, where he held that this ingredient is satisfied by adducing evidence, direct or circumstantial, placing the accused person at the scene of crime. So that's really enough for you to successfully prove this ingredient. Let's also proceed to look at another interesting case under this same ingredient, which is the case of Bogere Moses and another versus Uganda. It's a Supreme Court Criminal Appeal number 1 of 1997. In this case, court held that where prosecution is based on evidence of a single identifying witness under difficult conditions, for example, at night, court must exercise great care to satisfy itself that there is no danger of mistaken identity. This is really very important. You will, in your third year or at another level, you'll be looking at evidence law, and you'll be looking at the weight attached to the evidence of a single identifying witness and what court must do to ensure that such evidence is taken in. But that will be a lesson of another day. Let's now proceed to look at the aggravating circumstances or the aggravating factors, the ones that at the beginning I had summarized, which are 4. So let's start by looking at one of them, which is that the offender is infected with HIV. Now, again, I insist, because this is where most of you students really get confused. These 4 aggravating circumstances or factors, all of them needn't be in a place for it to be aggravated defilement. Just one of these 4 is sufficient in its own self. Okay, I hope I've really made that very clear. So let's proceed to look at one of the aggravating ingredients, and that is that the offender is infected with HIV. I encourage you to look at section 129 subsection 4B of the Penal Code Act. It provides for that ingredient. Let me proceed to share with you a case which is Uganda versus Chizamunira. It is criminal session case number 159 of 2017, and basically in this case, Justice Emmanuel Baguma observed that HIV is proved by an HIV medical report. So that's how you'll prove that actually the accused person has HIV. So every time in these sexual offenses, the first thing normally that we'll do at police is to ensure that we carry out that test to rule out any of these ingredients, or specifically the ingredient of being infected with HIV. Also, under that same ingredient, I encourage you to look at section 129 subsection 6 of the Penal Code Act, which requires an accused person of aggravated defilement to undergo and have an HIV test. So this HIV test of the accused person is mandatory when they are taken to police. Let's now proceed to look at the second aggravating factor, which is where the offender is a parent or guardian or a person in authority. So if the accused person is either a parent or one that had authority or was a guardian of the victim, then that will make it aggravated defilement. Authority, I encourage you to go and look at section 129 subsection 4C of the Penal Code Act. It provides for that aggravating element. The third aggravating element is where the victim is a person with a disability. Now, if the person on whom the defilement has been committed is one with a disability, and here the disability is defined under law, we'll be looking at section 129 subsection 7 of the Penal Code Act shortly. But before we go there, this aggravating factor of disability is provided for under section 129 subsection 4D of the Penal Code Act. And also of interest to you is the case of Uganda versus Massa Simon. It's HCCC case number 12 of 2009. And in this case, basically, court held that this is proved by medical evidence or a testimony of the parents. Okay, so the aspect of the disability, either if there is medical evidence, court will be satisfied, or the testimony of the parents as to the disability of the victim, this is also good enough. Let's now proceed to look at section 129 subsection 7 of the Penal Code Act, which defines disability as a substantial functional limitation of daily life activities. So what amounts to disability? Any substantial functional limitation of daily life to the victim is good enough to fall within the brackets and meaning of what amounts to a disability. And then the fourth aggravating factor of this offense is that the offender is a serial offender. Now, if the offender is a serial offender, okay, then that is also an aggravating factor, and we'll charge him for aggravated defilement. Authority, look at section 129 subsection 4E of the Penal Code Act. It's authoritative on that aggravating element. And then also of interest, again, on this aggravating element is section 129 subsection 7 of the Penal Code Act, which actually goes on to define who a serial offender is, and this is a person who has a previous conviction for the offense of defilement or aggravated defilement. So provided the accused person has a previous conviction of either defilement or aggravated defilement, then under the law they are categorized as a serial offender. So ladies and gentlemen, that was really all for the offense of aggravated defilement. Once again, I encourage you to subscribe to my channel, turn on the notification, and also share and like this video. And also for students who require that extra expert touch, please feel free to always contact us for your personal private mentorship so that we are able to put you on our expert program to always guide you in your legal career. This is really, really important, especially at this tender age when you're building your legal profession. You need an expert to mentor you so that you do not encounter many of the challenges that we encountered while we were still at your stage. So you really need that mentorship and expert mentorship to guide you, to train you. Please contact us. Our contact numbers are down in the description box. We meet once again in another class. Bye-bye.